Okay, working on my son's duster again today, and here's some of the stuff we're going to work on a little bit. As you can see, this is the front trim that goes on the grill, and of course it's had its share of being beat up over the years, you know, rocks kicking up, dust, dirt, whatever, and we're going to change it from that into this. So, polished side of it, essentially what we're doing is taking off all the anodization on it, anodizing off of it, and then we'll polish it up to something similar to this, so you can almost see yourself in it. But yeah, and then probably what I'm going to do is actually clear coat it. I figured out how to get the black paint back in the letters, and we'll kind of go over that. In order to get the anodizing off, really what I'm doing is starting with a coarser grit of sandpaper. I don't want to go too crazy, but what I'm using is 120 grit initially, and then I'll work my way down to 1,000 grit, and then I'll go down to a 2,000 grit sandpaper to just kind of clean it up. And from time to time you're going to run across these deeper pits. You're going to see one right there. You can see one. It's actually pretty easy to just take a screwdriver and go on the back side of the piece, like this one here. I'll let it focus in there. And what you can do is just essentially take a little flat-headed screwdriver or a Phillips screwdriver and just press lightly on the spot. You'll be able to find it in the back side of the piece you're looking at, and just real lightly kind of push that little piece back out, wiggle it around to get that out, and then of course sand it down, and you shouldn't be able to see it. So some of these pits are so deep though, even after you sand off the anodizing on it, as you can see here, I still got a ways to go to the end to get the anodizing off. Some of those are still going to show through no matter how much you polish it out, unless you're really aggressive and take it down a whole bunch. Again, say what I'm doing right now is going to go ahead and take some heavier grit sandpaper. Here's some fine 150 grit, so relatively coarse for what we're doing, but it does a really good job. Again, you can see where I've started to do it on top here. You can see it's taking out a pretty good cut, and you can see a little dot right in the middle of the screen, so there's a little dent in there. Something apparently kicked up and hit that. So what I'm going to do from the back side is just very gently kind of work a flat blade screwdriver against it, kind of push, and don't overdo it so you end up with a bump rather than a pit, and push that out forward. If you get it out a little beyond, of course, then you can sand it down flush again too, but we're going to make that pit go away, and just for reference you can see about where it is there. So on the next little shot you'll see where I've taken that particular pit out of there. Okay, there we go. So I pushed that out from the back side. You can still see a little blem there, but not like it was in relation to that. Pretty well got her pushed out, and all I did was use this little piece of junk screwdriver, but it worked just fine, just enough to get a little pressure on the back side to push out that little dimple in there. It was also a pit, not only a rock hit, but it actually pitted a little bit, so it took me a little more sanding down. And here you can see towards the end a little bit better how the anodizing is. You can actually see a little difference in the finish on it. So it's coming off. Again, we start with the heavy core stuff mainly to get it down, and then we'll work down actually to a 2,000 grit sandpaper to get it nice and smooth, and then we'll show you how to polish her up. Like you say, again, up to something like this. As you can see, we've still got a few little scratches and stuff on there, but we can work a majority out of that compared to that mess. As you can see, pretty bad. Just an FYI, I talked about paint too. It's relatively easy. What I've done in the past is I just take trim black and I'll spray the letters, and of course it'll be all over the top of this also. But then what I will typically do is I'll take a block like this sponge pad here, and I'll take a rag and put some lacquer thinner on it, or paper towel real thinly, and then all I have to do is just go across the top of it real lightly and go ahead and remove the excess paint over the top of it. And of course, you know, it's not going to go down into the hole because it's a rigid block, and it'll clean up all the paint around the exterior of the embossed letters. Currently using 1,000 grit wet and dry paper on it. I'm using it dry just because I don't have any water out here right now. But you can use wet and dry, and again, working on the same end of the piece I was before. Shiny part, and working it down. As you can see, it's actually shining up from where it was a few minutes ago with the 150 grit on there. So I'm going to take it down till it doesn't feel like it's resisting as much. You'll see the polish start to come out of it at that point. And at that point I'll switch down to 2000 grit, and then we'll show you how we start polishing her up. Alright, this is again, you can find this at the local shop. Whether or not you use, I don't know if I'm supposed to give the name brands or not, but just a mag or aluminum polish that you can put on there. And this one's kind of a pasty type of product. You can dab it on your fingers, and it's more like just a paste or something. But anyhow, you can go ahead and use it on a towel like that. I've also been known to put it on the end of my angle grinder here with a buffing wheel on it. That also works. It tends to maybe do a little bit more than I want to when it takes it down. Kind of can tend to leave some ridges and stuff too. So what I particularly prefer, for the most part, is just use a rag like that, put a dab on it, work it around in a circular motion, and polish it out. Now again, here you can kind of see where I ended up, kind of rough yet. And then of course here where I need to polish out a little bit more too. But you can see the transition right there. In just a second you'll be able to see the difference here. Okay, I'm going to try and hold it and film at the same time. But yeah, I got some of it on there. This is essentially all I do is sit and rub and rub and rub. You'll get the oxidation on your rag like this pretty bad. Yeah, it's taking it off. Again, you can kind of see where I was and where I am, and you just take that off of there, and by George, look at that. You get a nice shiny piece of trim. Pits have magically disappeared. Well, I see a little polish there yet, but we can take that off real quick too. And takes it right off. Anyhow, that's the way you do it. Again, I've got a ways to go on this, but what I just showed you from that tip to right here, where we started out, probably took me all of 15 minutes to finish sanding off that anodizing. And of course, I've still got to do the top and a lot more work on this piece, but you might have a couple hours in it. But if you're doing a show car or something, I think it's well worth the time. And of course, I'll want to get paint on it also, so get a good idea of it. Actually, you can see the reflection of the chair in it sitting across from me also. So pretty good from that mess to that with just a little bit of work. So not too shabby. This whole half here, like I said, I probably got 45 minutes into it for the half of the thing. So you get a couple hours in her. Should have a really nice piece of polished up, once anodized trim. Thanks for watching. Like me, please.